Welcome to the DAZN Boxing Show, presented by AutoZone. I'm Chris Mannix. He is the former junior middleweight champion, Sergio Mora. And Sergio, the GWOAT is back this weekend. Claressa Shields making her return to the boxing ring for the first time in a little over a year. And she's doing it in a pretty consequential fight. 2 belts will be on the line in 2 different weight classes when Claressa Shields faces Vanessa Joanisse, the vacant light heavyweight championship and the heavyweight championship of the world. So Claressa, who is already a 3-time undisputed champion in 3 different weight classes, she will go for a 4th and 5th division title. So I guess we'll start there. Like, what do you make of Claressa's decision to move up in weight to take on Vanessa Joanisse?
You say consequential, I say 2 for 1. I mean, 2 for 1. You're getting a heavyweight championship of the world and the light heavyweight championship, something like that. I don't know what fight they're fighting for. I know that Claressa Shields is the best super middleweight at 168. Now she's moving up north to fight a fighter that's been knocked out at heavyweight. Stylistically, we know who the GWOAT is in this fight. That's Claressa Shields. She has better hand speed, better foot speed, better technique, better opposition, better resume, better. This is a polished fighter in Shields against a fighter in Joanisse that really shouldn't be in the ring with her. But since she holds a title, here we are. It's just politics, Mannix. So it's a calculated risk by Shields and the team and the promotion of Claressa Shields moving up in weight. But if you really think about it, this isn't like a middleweight going up to heavyweight. This isn't Roy Jones Jr. going up to fight John Ruiz, a legitimate heavyweight. This isn't another middleweight and James Toney going up to heavyweight to fight those guys. No. This is a calculated risk against a woman that's at 160, 168, moving up to 172, 173 to fight for a heavyweight championship of the world. I don't know, sounds a little tricky for me. Consequential for you, 2 for 1 for me.
Well, look, I think it is the best of some bad options that Claressa Shields had in trying to make this next fight. I spoke to her earlier in the week, and she made it clear that she tried to get some of the fighters in the lower weight classes to get into the ring with her. She tried to make a fight against one of the champions at 147. She tried to make a fight against Natasha Jonas at 154. The timing wasn't really right for a rematch for Claressa against Savannah Marshall, who has emerged as her top rival in these heavier weight classes. So this was an opportunity for Claressa to get back in the ring, which she wanted to do, hasn't been in a boxing ring since last June, and do it in a way that adds something to her resume. She can become a 5-division world champion if she wins this fight against Vanessa Joanisse. It's not exactly Sugar Ray Leonard, Donnie Lalonde, but it has happened before where you fight for 2 titles in 2 different weight classes. So I get it, is kind of the way I'd put it. It is a chance for her to enhance her resume and to stay active in boxing, because otherwise we'd be talking about her kind of sitting out even longer, maybe getting back in that PFL cage. So this is kind of what it was for Claressa Shields. But I think it's obvious, Sergio, that if she wants to be in big fights, she's got to cut down in weight. She's got to get down at least to 154, maybe even to 147, and then hope to lure some of those top talents. Like, there are good fighters at 147. Like, Sandy Ryan is a really good fighter at 147 pounds. Natasha Jonas, good fighter at 154, popular fighter over in the UK. That would be a good fight. Another fight I discussed with Claressa would be a showdown against her Olympic teammate, Mikaela Mayer. I mean, Mikaela Mayer is now campaigning at 147. In the US, a matchup between Claressa and Mikaela would probably do pretty good business if you put it in the right place and you promote it properly. So, look, I think this fight, Sergio, is fine for what it is. Like, it's her way of adding belts to her collection, burnishing her resume, but moving forward, if she wants to be in the kind of major events that we're seeing other women in, she's got to cut down in weight and hope some of those women are willing to fight her.
She's in a class of her own in a weight division that is not populated by a lot of talented fighters. That's the way it is. It happens in different eras in boxing. Yes, the best eras right now in women's boxing is lightweight, it's welterweight, it's even lower, but it's not middleweight. Middleweight is not going to happen. And forget about heavyweight, where she's fighting right now. Like you said, this is a stay busy fight at another championship, but no one knows who the champion of heavyweight is. There's probably a handful of fighters at heavyweight, let alone champions. Claressa Shields, like I said, needs to go down in weight, because right now there's nobody around her weight division that people are going to pay for. They're not going to want to go watch. It's just one of those things. She's in the wrong era. Now, if she goes down in weight, yes, she's going to be dehydrated, but she's fought at 154 in the high 50s. She's a big girl. She's tall. But in order to make the big fights and get the big money and get the worldwide recognition, you got to sacrifice, Mannix. That's the reason I wore this shirt. Look, Roberto Duran, one of the all-time greatest fighters of all time. This guy was 5'7" at most. I sized him up in person. I mean, we went from 135 all the way to fighting beasts in Iran Barkley at 116, fought 160 plus, fought for 5 different decades. That is greatness. When you go out of your element, when you chew and eat more than you're presented, that is what you're supposed to do. Get out of your comfort zone. So if Claressa Shields wants to be the greatest woman of all time, she's self-proclaimed the greatest. But right now, Serrano can make a case. Katie Taylor beat Serrano. She can make a case. So if you really want to have that recognition where others call you great and you're not just calling yourself great, you got to take sacrifices. She needs to go down to where the bigger talent is. And then that's when you actually play on even playing fields. Because right now, she's a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah, to your point, there are less than 25 women registered at heavyweight right now. So it is a small pond in that weight class. I think one way Claressa can make the most, though, of this opportunity is to knock Vanessa Joanisse out. Like, she has been knocked out before. Claressa hasn't had a knockout since 2017, but she does throw with power. And if you listen to her, she believes that not having to cut weight for this fight is only going to enhance that power. So if she can score a knockout, I think she'll make this opportunity ultimately worth it. So let's now talk, Sergio, about a fight we saw last weekend. Jake Paul in Tampa, Florida, knocking out Mike Perry. Sergio, I think it's pretty clear at this point that MMA fighters cannot hang with Jake Paul. I don't care if they're Mike Perry. MMA fighters can't do it. Mike Perry can't do it. Tyron Woodley couldn't do it. I don't believe Conor McGregor could do it. I don't believe Alex Pereira could do it. I don't think any of these MMA fighters who get into a boxing ring with Jake Paul with boxing gloves on, under boxing rules, can beat this man. But there's now been some talk about Jake Paul fighting another real boxer. And that real boxer was on his undercard, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who won a 6-round decision against some guy named Uriah Hall. It wasn't a very good performance with Chavez Jr., who is years removed from his last good performance. But it was enough for your pal, Gilberto Mendoza, to go on social media and suggest that he would sanction Jake Paul against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. for a title. Now, we didn't quite specify which title. And if anybody knows the WBA, they have got a whole slew of titles, lots and lots of titles. You get a title. You get a title. That's how the WBA operates. But people did notice this on social media, that Gilberto Mendoza said he would sanction Jake Paul and Chavez Jr. for a title. Your response, Sergio Mora?
Well, I got to know Gilberto Mendoza, and I know that he's a salesman. We'll leave it at that. He's a salesman. He could sell anything to anyone. So he's going to try to sell the boxing public on how Jake Paul, who only has 2 or maybe 3 professional fighters under his resume, deserves a world championship, whether it's a regular or the interim or the medium. I don't care. It's still a belt around a YouTuber who's only had 2 or 3 boxing matches, fighting 48-year-olds and fighting old men. He does not deserve it. The way a champion, the way a contender, the way a boxer, a professional boxer, wins a championship, he climbs the ranks, Mannix. He fights the best in steps. That's how you do it until you ultimately get to the top, until you fight a guy or one of the champions or what, even if it's for a vacant title, it doesn't matter, someone that earned it. That's how you become a champion. This isn't a popularity contest. This isn't who has more followers. This isn't who brings butts to seats. No, this is boxing. If you're going to take it serious, the WBA and every other world organization and sanctioning body should take notice. You do not give a man that doesn't fight fighters a chance for a world championship. It's a disgrace, and that's the reason a lot of people, frown upon the oldest sanctioning body in boxing. The WBA is the oldest sanctioning body. It's not the most coveted anymore, but if you go back in history, some of the greatest fighters, some of the greatest names of all time, iconic names, have held the WBA championship. You're telling me Jake Paul is going to be fighting for that championship? Ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. And I am a unabashed supporter of what Jake Paul has been doing in boxing. I think the opportunities that he is giving to fighters on his undercard are opportunities that may not have been there otherwise. And for what it's worth, I'm fine with Jake Paul fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Now, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., Sergio stinks. Like, he stinks at this point. He beat Uriah Hall, who had one fight on his resume before that, and that was a 4-rounder against ex-NFL player Le'Veon Bell. Like, that was the resume of Uriah Hall. And it took Chavez Jr. 6 rounds to win a decision that did not go over well with that Tampa crowd. So if Jake wants to get in the ring with Chavez Jr., that's kind of an interesting little Jake Paul fight, right? Like, you're facing, technically, your first former champion. Like, Chavez Jr., say what you want about him, but he was the middleweight champion of the world. He did have a fun performance against Sergio Martinez. That was like a lifetime ago. But, it's a fine fight for Jake Paul. And if Gilberto Mendoza wants to inject the WBA into that conversation by creating a title like the United States / Mexico cruiserweight champion of the world, have at it. Like, go ahead. But you can't make it for like the vacant world cruiserweight title. No. You can't make it for a main title in the cruiserweight division. Not only has Jake Paul not earned that, but Chavez Jr. hasn't earned that. Chavez Jr. has done diddly for years. He's done nothing, absolutely nothing, but lose to Anderson Silva and fight a guy like Uriah Hall. Like, he does not belong in a real world title picture. But if after this Mike Tyson fight, Jake wants to get back on the real boxer track, I'm fine. Chavez Jr., bring him on. I actually think that's kind of a cool fight for the first quarter of 2025.
I'll watch. I would love to watch a faded Chavez Jr., undisciplined Chavez Jr., former champion, to fight Jake Paul. That's a legitimate fight. Yes, I would fight, but I don't want a title attached to that. It could be for anything else. It could be for the social media title. It could be for some made-up title. That's just going to be a prize fight. Both of them are going to get paid. It'll probably be a pay-per-view. It'll sell well with the Mexican fans. I'll buy. I'm in for that. Just don't make it for a championship. Keep making it for what it is, a popularity contest, man. If Jake Paul is a popular fighter, and the following is insane. And Chavez Jr., he's fighting off of nepotism. His dad's famous last name, that's his following. I'm not going to hate on that. Just don't add a prestigious belt to it. Something that I worked all my life for, and other champions I've worked all their hard-earned career life for and bled for. All of a sudden, a kid with followers is going to be fighting for it. It's unfair and it's not right.
I mean, we're already talking about a faded, undisciplined former junior middleweight champion fighting Jake Paul. Why not a faded, undisciplined former middleweight champion doing it?
We both won the WBC championship. Why not? I'm next.